Hello and welcome to today's webinar on how to get started as a computing lead using Purple Mash. Firstly, just want to say that luckily for you, Purple Mash has got a whole host of resources to help guide you through your role as a subject lead for computing. What I'll show you today are the different resources that you have accessible within Purple Mash and how you can use them to properly develop your subject across your school. To begin with, to access the most relevant documents is to click on the Teachers tab at the top. And then we have, just for you, your own Subject Leader Toolkit, which can be found on the top row of the Teachers section. Within here, you can see we've got toolkits for several different subject areas, but for you, the Computing Leaders Toolkit really is going to be your best friend. So within here, we've got a whole range of really useful documents, exemplar templates, things that you can borrow and adapt to help really shape the subject of computing at your school. It might be useful just to show you the toolkit overview to begin with. So I'm just going to click on the first document. Now this just shows you what the toolkit contains and how it can best help you in your role. So we have example acceptable use agreements for EYFS, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, parents and carers and staff. We also have action plan examples and templates for you to create your own. Further down, we've also got audits of computing, so you can really help get a good picture of where computing currently is with your school and how you can help fill the gaps and make it really progress in the direction that you want it to. If you're fortunate enough to have a budget, then we have a budget tool that you can make use of, which just helps you allow seeing where you can spend the money with different physical or training needs within your school. If your job entails you rewriting your computing policy, we also have an example one that you can use and adapt. And also online safety terminology, a glossary for you that you can share with staff so that you're aware of how you can help develop these skills and awareness within your school. You may already be familiar with the progression of skills documents that we've got within the computing scheme of work here on Purple Mash, but we also have links to it within the Computer Lead Toolkit as well. Really useful as well, we'll have a look at these, the pupil and parent and carer voice. So if you're wanting to get feedback from all the stakeholders at your school, we have got examples for you for early years, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and also a focused pupil voice looking at online safety for Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and for parents. And then we have a safeguarding poster, a really useful self-evaluation tool which allows you just to be reflective and see whereabouts it is that you need to focus your efforts and help plan for future training and maybe if you need to purchase or buy any hardware as well. A good starting off point as well are the staff surveys, which just help you gain an idea as to where staff confidence levels are, just to help you target and pinpoint future internal CPD if you need to. And probably the one that you want to start off with is the tips for computing leads. So if you are brand new to the role, it's a really helpful resource just to give you the top tips that'll help you in your role. So back in the toolkit, I was going to have a look at this tips for computing leads. If I open it up, again, we've got a document and it's quite a nice short one here, but just gives you some ideas as to what it is you want to kind of set as a benchmark for your subject. For example, this one's a really important one. Know what your role should and shouldn't entail. It's really a common feature for all staff members to interrupt a computing lead in the middle of the lessons. Oh, this computer won't work, or the internet's gone down, what should I do? And it's really useful for you as a computing lead to set your boundaries right at the beginning so people know where to go and where to find the resources. For you as a subject lead, it's for you to guide and shape your subject. So if you can quite early on establish ground rules for your colleagues and pupils as to what your role entails, I would definitely say that's a really useful starting off point. Also, moving down here, understanding your school's overall current position and future plans is really useful. Having a look at your school evaluation form and school improvement plan And also conducting those staff surveys to see where their confidence levels lie is a really useful starting off point for you to build upon. Once you've got all those kind of under your belt, it's great to be able to generate an action plan based on the evidence that you've found out. You can then set up and refine protocols for planning, delivering and assessing computing within your school. You can set up monitoring schedules. And then once you start rolling things out, you can start to begin auditing yourself as a computing lead using the self-evaluation tool. As it says here, we recommend to do it twice a year. Some schools, prefer you to do it termly. It's up to you and your school and the expectations they set of you. It's really useful as well to have a good network with local schools in your area and what they're doing with regards to computing. So we always recommend, either get in touch with any colleagues that you know in neighbouring schools, but also we have a really useful and a really positive environment on our Purple Mash Facebook group where people are sharing good practice, asking for advice and giving good feedback. And then probably this last one, you probably don't need to be told this, but try not to do everything at once. Give yourself small attainable goals and try and just drip feed that throughout the year. You can't do everything all at once, so try and take time to embed new initiatives. Okay, so once you've got your head around, your role as computing lead and how you want to tackle things, we really recommend you start by having a look at your school's current computing policy and then adapt it to reflect what you expect your school policy to be. We do have an example computing policy that you can use, a bit of a waggle, like what a good one looks like, but you can also borrow from this and adapt it to create your own. So a really good, useful example showing you the kind of standards that you want to aim for. It's really useful for you to be able to also check your current school's acceptable use agreements. We have in here, as you can see, acceptable use agreements for EYFS, Key Stage 1, 2, parent acceptable use, and for staff. So we recommend that these are always referred to and just kept within date and always refer to your school, dates and parameters that they set for you. To begin with, it's really useful to get an audit and see whereabouts, computing is in your school. So we would definitely recommend you starting off with your audit of computing. Within here, we've got quite a really handy use separating into different areas. So what school training has been taking place for teaching staff, support staff, governors, and so on. Further down, we have computing curriculum. Do we have it in place? No, partially yes. You can tick and complete these yourself so that you can reflect on this document and refer back to it at a later date. And then hardware. So do you need to invest in any, physical devices for you to help implement your computing curriculum at your school? That's always a really, really useful way to start. The staff surveys, if you could email these to staff and they could do them in their own time, then you can just populate the results and that should hopefully give you a nice idea as to where staff feel their confidence and expertise lies when they're delivering computing and online safety. So these teacher surveys are interactive PDFs. So as you can see here, if I was to send this out and email it to my colleagues, they could fill in date, obviously pop your name there, and then they can just say whether they agree somewhat or fully agree with the statements on this. And you should find that this gives you a really good picture of the different strands of the computing curriculum and how they feel they are able to deal with that and teach that, but also whether they understand the policy, the online safety policy, especially due to all the safeguarding implications that involves as well. So really, really useful resource. Again, this doesn't have to take you a huge amount of time out of your precious PPA or subject leadership time if you have any. Feel free just to email this out to your colleagues, give them a week or two to complete it, and then again, you can compile the results. Keep a copy of it either digitally or a paper copy so you've got it in your file for evidence to show that you are, referring to staff's responses. There is also the online safety version here, and again that is interactive so that your colleagues can just click through and show you their responses digitally. So once you've got a good picture of where computing lies within school, how confident staff feel and your curriculum coverage and your computing policy, it would then be a good idea to gain your key stakeholder views as well. So the pupil and parent voice documents are really useful tools for you to use. You might just want to select a couple of children from each of the key stage areas in EYFS, or you might want to send out a blanket, pupil voice, parent voice on your school website, and then those parents and carers can fill it in and return it who are wanting to participate. There's also pupil and parent voices for online safety. So if I was just to open up the Key Stage 2 online safety pupil voice, as you can see here, it's very much aimed towards children with simple tick boxes, images as well, but you would probably expect that they would be able to fill it in with adult supervision or with a teacher's supervision. Again, you might want to build this in as part of your computing lessons. The online safety one itself, you might want to even incorporate into your Safer Internet Day activities when they appear in February each year. So just a really useful tool to show that you are listening to pupils and their parents and the wider school community about where they feel safe and skillful with the different areas of the computing curriculum. With the events of the past year and the amount of online learning children were participating in, all schools now need to have a remote learning policy. So this is a really good example. If your school, I'm sure they already have it in place, but if you're needing to review it, you can refer to the remote learning policy on Purple Mash, where we give you guidance and ideas as to what your remote learning policy should look like and what it should contain. So a really key useful document for you to refer to. Just further down out of view as well, should you ever receive a deep dive inspection in computing, we've got a really handy document that just gives you an idea as to what you could expect to be asked and the kind of evidence you would need to provide. So covering the 3 I's, intent, implementation and impact, it guides you through example questions that an inspector might ask and then your suggested support that you can find within Purple Mash to be able to help answer these questions and provide evidence that your school is meeting that requirement or answering that question. So a really useful document. If you're not aware of it, I would definitely spend some time having a look through. All of these are PDFs, so you can download them or print them so you've got them there for your file as well. Okay. As you can see, we've also got some guidance. If you are leading an online safety evening for parents and carers, then we do have how to host a parent and carer online safety evening guidance. And also we have some handouts, which are really helpful, part of parenting in a digital world, giving them advice on how they can keep their children safe at home. So some great, materials for you to be able to use, hopefully save you a bit of time, and it's some go-to ready-made resources at your disposal. Now, the top tips for computing leaders did reference the self-evaluation. So a way just to critique yourself, ideally twice a year, once at the beginning of the year and then at the end to reflect upon the progress that you've made and the things that you've implemented. The self-evaluation tool is really handy, and again, you can complete it directly within the PDF. So for example here, at the beginning of the academic year, what was your role like? How do you see yourself? And at the end of the year. So that reflective nature, just showing how you can then build upon the different aims and objectives, or just the things that you need to complete. So at the start of the year, anything that you hadn't done or you'd partially done, hopefully by the end of the year, you would be able to click that they are mostly all in place. Okay, so it's a working document for you yourself, but also if you have any SLT members who you require to show the progress that you're making within your subject, it's a really useful self-reflective guide for you, especially if you're new to the role, covering the key elements of the resources, the monitoring, how to lead your subject, professional development and key documents as well. So again, another really handy resource for you. Now, all of this Computing Leader Toolkit you can download a zip folder and work on offline if you wish. It'll always be here accessible for you as part of the Teacher's Toolkit. One of the key things as your role will entail is to be monitoring, children's work and the planning that teachers will take part in as part of computing. So within Purple Mash, it's really quite useful for you to be able to access the computing scheme of work. If your colleagues are using Purple Mash for computing, then you've got copies of all their plans and the resources that can be found within the computing scheme of work area. Hopefully, you'll be motivated to see the new features that have now been rolled out within the computing scheme. So just to help streamline it for yourself and for your colleagues, all units within each year group are now broken down into the 3 strands of computing, so computer science, IT and digital literacy. If your school have mixed age group classes as well, further down beyond this overview document, you'll see that we do have an exemplar Cycle A and Cycle B for each year group mix. So for year 1, 2, year 3, 4 and year 5, 6. And then coding breakdowns to help avoid repetition and gaps occurring as well. So it's really useful that yourself and staff familiarise yourself with the scheme of work if you will be using Purple Mash to deliver most of your computing coverage. Also within each of the year group areas, you'll find that we now have teacher slideshows for every single lesson, for every unit, for every year group. So the slideshows are ready-made resources that teachers can use to help structure and scaffold their teaching. And it's really useful for those teachers who might not be as confident at delivering computing lessons. So if I was just to move this over here for a moment for you to see, the teacher PowerPoints allow you to edit them if needs be. So you click Enable Editing and Edit Anyway. And then each lesson is very much structured, clearly following success criteria and aims. Hyperlinks to all the resources can be found, and really handy teacher notes can be found for each slide as well. So it's very much aimed towards the less confident teacher. So if you do find any of your staff surveys give you the indication of staff members not being particularly confident, and this should really help aim and encourage them to be able to deliver to a similar standards throughout all the school if they're following the scheme of work. Also for coding and spreadsheets, we now have teacher videos. So prior to the lesson, teachers can quickly watch these short videos. They don't tend to last more than 5 minutes, but just give them an overview as to what
knowledge of
children
coding.
should achieve by the time they've finished the lesson.
This could be used in tandem with vocabulary flashcards placed around the classroom.
So really handy tips, just hopefully, again, giving that confidence to the teachers and just feeling like they've got extra support there. Okay, and then any key vocabulary or terminology that colleagues might find tricky to understand, we now have a key terms explained section where some of the new vocabulary that teachers might not be familiar with, they can click on it and they can find a video definition.
Computation. A calculation that follows a combination of arithmetical and non-arithmetical steps. This is
Okay, so just handy resources, hopefully that might just increase the level of confidence within computing at your school. If your school has an EYFS, we have also mapped out our Purple Mash and Mini Mash resources to the new updated framework for EYFS. So in the reception area, you can find that the 7 strands of the EYFS have all been mapped out, and you can see the early learning goals, and we've now got lesson ideas that give you a starting off point and just hints and tips as to how you can help accomplish those early learning goals using the tools within Purple Mash and Mini Mash. It might be useful if you wanted to download them or print them out and share with your colleagues, and it will show you whether the resources can either be found in Mini Mash, Purple Mash, or in both. So here, for example, these mash cams can be found in Mini Mash and Purple Mash. Now also, as your role as computing lead, not only do you need to provide the hardware and you've got a curriculum, obviously on Purple Mash you can have the computing curriculum we have for you, which includes all the resources. The final stage is the assessment, so you can track and monitor progress. Now within Purple Mash we have 2 methods that you can do this. If I open up the assessment tools and progression area within the computing scheme of work, I've got some video guidance that shows me the different tools I can use within Purple Mash. In general though, we've
Introducing
got a spreadsheet version that you can open up either on a PC or a Mac, and this is a way that teachers and colleagues can manually, at the end of each unit, input children's attainment as to how well the teacher feels they have met the learning objectives within each unit. So here, for example, if I was in year 1 and I was wanting to input my data, I can open up the spreadsheet, click Enable Editing, and then Enable Content. And what that allows me to do is now interact with the document to input my data. So I can type in pupil A, pupil B, and so on. And when I finish delivering a unit, for example, if I've just finished delivering unit 1.4, that filters it into the Computer Science National Curriculum Objective. So I can then click on the unit number and it will provide me with some guidance as to what the child would be for emerging, expected and exceeding. So I can then select for pupil A, they'll be emerging. Maybe I've got enough evidence to suggest that pupil B is expected, so I can press it 2 times. And then as we go through the year and deliver all the units, then we'll find the children will be completing their column, and what it does is it will then generate an overall judgment to help reporting. So in this case, pupil B is still emerging despite having a couple of units coming out as expected. So it calculates the weighting and allows you to have that kind of idea as to where the children are based on their end of unit assessments. As it's a spreadsheet, you can work on it collaboratively if you've got more than one class per year group, and you as a subject lead will be able to look at these as and when you are doing your assessment cycles at school. The other option we have for being able to track and monitor progress is a really useful tool called our Objective and Judgment Tracker. This can be found within the data section, and it allows you to extract all the children's judgments that teachers have applied onto their work. All the judgments will be kept within Purple Mash for as long as the children are at the school. For example, if I look at my computing area here, my year 2 children, I've been tracking their work by just assessing the work they've done at the end of each lesson. If I now wanted to look at how well my year 2 is getting on with computer science, I can click on computer science, and it's currently showing me my whole school. If I just want to look for a particular class, I can click the class and it will show me their outcome. If I want to drill down by particular groups that I've created, I can expand on the groups, and it might be that I want to look at pupil premium, or I want to look at August birthdays or anything like that. I can extract the data to any different filtering method that I want to. I can also view data from different date parameters. So it might be that I want to look at, last autumn versus this autumn, and so on. So you can increase and change the date parameters as often as you like, and you can choose whether the data is shown on average or the most recent. All of the results as well, you can export to Excel if you want a spreadsheet, if you want to turn it into graphs and charts, for example. But for example, here, if I was a computing lead and I wanted to see how well year 2 are getting on with computer science, because maybe that's my focus for this year, then I can see that at the moment, this objective, understanding algorithms, looks okay. We've got quite a lot of green, so above expected. The creating and debugging, though, we've not got as many, but it's this one here that's probably piquing my interest because we've got a couple of reds, not many greens at all. So if I wanted to find out a bit more about why we're getting this outcome for using logical reasoning in year 2, I can select the objective on the left-hand side. And now it shows me that for each child, this is their average outcome against this objective. And I've now got evidence linked to this particular objective. So if I wanted to know why Dion is below, is it because she just hasn't had enough evidence to provide her with an expected or exceeding outcome? Or is the work too hard? Is she not getting good enough feedback from the marking, from a teacher, and so on? So if I wanted to find out and have a look at her evidence, I can click on the hyperlink here and it will take me to her work. So it will show me when she did the work, It gives me her judgment. I can see her comments and so on. And if I actually want to mark that work, I can click on it, select mark, and I can actually see what work she did in order to get that judgment applied to it. So the assessment and judgment, objective and judgment tracker is a really, really useful tool. Again, as long as the children are in the school, it will store their work in the data area. If you want to explore that option a little bit more, you might find it useful to access the support videos. They can be found by clicking on support behind your name, going down to the help videos, and then you should be able to see there's an advanced videos section all about how to report judgments and capturing data. So I really recommend that whenever you have some spare time, when you're wanting to really focus on how to track assessment for computing in your school, have a watch through of these. Okay. So planning, content for lessons, resources and assessments, everything's on Purple Mash for you and your colleagues to deliver the computing curriculum right across school from early years to year 6. If you and your colleagues, you feel like you are maybe lacking in any areas of confidence or expertise, it's quite handy to know that we do have an online training platform. This can be found in our teachers section and under the professional development tab. The training platform is the first icon at the top here, and it takes you through to our online training platform where we currently have 16 different courses for you to click through. So you as a computing lead are probably set up as a school administrator. You can access this area to find out more about managing users at the end of the year, how to find work and moderate it, and so on. Further down though, if you have any colleagues who are saying they're not quite confident with the computing scheme, then it's really useful for you to direct them to this area because we have courses all on the computing scheme of work, coding, online safety and data handling. So for example, if we were having a push on online safety at my school, I would recommend colleagues to have a look at this online safety course, click start, and then they can navigate through in any order. So for example, the resources they could click through, watch videos that members of our CPD team have created, and there's also useful documents like printouts as well for them to access. So it's a ready-made pool of resources that's accessible 24/7 for you as teachers when you access your Purple Mash account. And to get back out into Purple Mash, just click next to your name, select log out, and it will pop you back where you were. Going back to the professional development area as well, obviously today you're watching a webinar which you've probably booked onto by clicking the webinar option. But one thing that you might find really useful, not just for yourself but also for colleagues, is that as part of your Purple Mash subscription, you have access to Mash chats. As you can see on the pop-up, these are intended for anyone who needs any help or support with teaching and learning using Purple Mash. So it can be you for a subject lead support. It could be that you've got an NQT working with you who's never used Purple Mash before and you haven't got time to go through Purple Mash with them. Or it could be that you've got a specific area of your development plan that you need help and support with. This is what the Mash Chat area is all about. Click on there and book a slot and you'll be able to have a one-to-one with members of the CPD team, either a phone call or a screen share, and we'll be able to answer all the questions and give you as much advice as we can. One thing just to bear in mind is these are designed to be taken during the school day, so you'll find availability is during PPA hours. Okay, hopefully that's a useful resource that you and your colleagues can make the most of. So hopefully we've covered lots of different resources and tips and tools for you to use as part of your role as computing lead. I hope you found today's webinar useful. By all means, revisit this teacher section as often as you like. Have a look at your subject leader toolkit. You've got the deep dive documents as well, and the professional development is there for you to guide yourself and your colleagues through computing using Purple Mash. And also, if you're into social media, feel free to join the Purple Mash Facebook group, or on Twitter we are at 2Simple Software, where you can find lots of useful upcoming news and you can pose any questions that you might have. Thank you ever so much for attending today's webinar. I hope you found it useful. Happy Purple Mashing, everyone.